Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Co-host Rich Gear here as well. Tonight, Doug, I'm kind of excited about this. You recently wrote a book called No Worries in Heaven. It's really a personal story of your odyssey, your journey through life with a wonderful woman. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that tonight. It's Doug's really personal, his and Vivian's personal life story in a way, and it's just a fascinating study. And talking about the hope we have in Christ and the journey we make along the way till we get to heaven is an interesting one. So, Doug, without any further ado, I want you start it out.
Okay, well, this is a new book that I've just published. It's on Amazon right now and also on Kindle. So it's a short little book, but it's a little bit of a testimony of what happened to me after my wife went on to heaven.
Now, I'll get a little promo here, Doug. I've had several people talk about this book, and it affected them quite deeply. It's quite an amazing thing that what you've written down there. And it's as I say, it's a short little tome, but it seems to really hit some real things hard. So I'm giving a plug for this book here. So let you know. Anyway, continue.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Rich.
Yeah.
My wife, Vivian, was a fairly unusual woman, and to say
Absolutely.
the least, she was a ball of fire in my mind. And but I really can't say that our relation was perfect, And though Vivian and I, we'd been together as a couple for 50 years, and we were married almost 49 years, we still had some rough spots that needed sanding, And so what we did last year, about January, we had signed up for a marriage mentorship where we studied the Love and Respect series taught by Emerson Eggrichs. And he was once a pastor here in Lansing at Trinity Church. And,
Oh, was he really? I didn't know that. Okay.
And he learned that the needs of a man and a woman are quite different. A woman's primary need is love, and the man's need is respect. And because these needs are different, and if we don't understand what those differences are, then we get on a crazy cycle where a woman's disrespect shuts down the man's love, and that further fuels disrespect and just keeps going around and around in circles.
Cycle. Now, we're not saying that a man doesn't need love or that a woman doesn't desire respect.
Right.
It's just the primary driving force
Exactly.
of the two different species. I mean, we've had books like this, the difference between men and women over the years, Doug.
Oh, yeah.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus type of thing. So we're aware of those things, but sometimes it needs to be put into a specific wording. You say, this is, okay, and you don't even realize you slipped into a thing where you're not given the respect, and or the man's not, and of course the man's not given the love, or vice versa, and those things do happen. That's man's desire for respect is really, and conversely, Doug, one of the worst things a man cannot stand is being shamed.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, that's the worst thing. We're very vulnerable in that regard, and it takes a strong guy to be able to overcome that. By the way, Doug, when I think about Christ on the cross, the biggest part of the suffering, men say, well, okay, he took the suffering. No, he was stripped naked before the world. We put him on a nice little loincloth on there. I don't think he had anything on at all. He was uncovered, whether he did or not, but he was shamed before the whole. And for men to be shamed, that's the worst thing. That's like the opposite of the respect, okay?
Yeah, the man wants to retreat under those circumstances.
Oh, boy.
Different men might lash out.
Yes, he can act out.
But me, I'm sort of an introvert anyway. And so, when Vivian wanted to talk about issues, when a woman comes up and says, we've got to talk. Oh, boy, now what's coming down the pike, And to a man, it feels like respect. But the woman really wants to sort things out, and it takes her a while to sort things out. And what I learned during this 10-week class is that I had to sit there and tough it out whenever she wanted to talk, until she's gotten to the point where she's spent everything that she's had in getting her issue resolved. But to a man, that feels like nagging, and when that happens, you just want to back off. That was what was going on between Vivian and I, and we were trying to figure all that out. But I would say by the end of that 10-week class that we took, I believe that Vivian and I had pretty much every one of our outstanding issues resolved. And
wow.
It's because we learned a little bit. She learned to back off when she could see that I was retreating. And she also learned that I was willing to talk about things as it was at my own speed, if you know what I mean. And that's the sort of thing. I'm an introvert, and I'm a little bit slower at communicating.
For Vivian, she's in the rabbit mode. You're in turtle mode.
That's
trying
right,
to get that together, and that sometimes causes the issues too. It is true, Doug. Think about, because men, the women are very. Well, they've even documented this. I've read this several places, and whether it's true or not, I don't know. But the women have approximately 3,000 to 5,000 more words in their vocabulary than most men do. I think I'm a notable exception to that, but maybe not. The point of it is that most men don't talk. They're more interested in fixing something.
That's right. Yeah, and
the woman is interested in talking it out.
Right.
Yep.
So we want to avoid all the drama and instead just get it fixed. Let's go on to the next thing.
And part of fixing it, though, for the woman is talking it out.
That's right.
That's what's hard for guys to understand sometimes.
And so it's two different dynamics to working against each other unless you learn that you need to walk in the other person's shoes and
hard to do.
Think that way. It's like the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. But the platinum rule is do unto others as others would have you do unto them.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the dynamic that we learned during that class, and it was really a marvelous thing. And it was we finished the class and started to work with some other couples that were going through the same things, and we was about 4 couples in this class that we were doing. And but in the midst of all this, Vivian was fighting breast cancer.
Yeah.
And the year before, she had discovered that this had gone to her breast, and she started with chemotherapy, which is brutal. It's
horrible.
Have her hair fall out and everything else, and then in the summer that she had the surgery to remove the breast, and then
was that a double or was it
a single? Yeah.
Okay.
Then in the fall, she went through radiation, and by the time we started the class in January, we believed that it was all gone. We thought that we were beyond the issue, and so she was taking some natural therapies, and we'd go to Grand Rapids together, and that was time where I was forced to talk with her because we were on. She always said that I could go from Michigan to Florida and not say a word, and it drove her nuts. But we were learning a little bit that we needed to talk through things, but what they did in this natural therapy was they had a test that's called a Signatera test. And they did that in March, and they test free cancer cells. And it had a score of 350, which was not good. As we showed that there was a cause of concern, and so we were hoping this natural therapy would help alleviate that. But then she took another test in April, and it showed a score of 2880.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so she immediately went to the oncologist, and they were drawing up some plans of what they could do because, and then they took a CAT scan, it was an MRI that they took, and found that it had spread to her liver and to her lungs. It was not good news, but it didn't seem to affect Vivian very
What?
much. You know, she seemed to carry on as well as she could. I could tell that you know it was taking a toll on her. You know, she'd get a little tired a little bit more easy, but
Doug, I was amazed because over at the doctors, you know, the therapy thing, Russell Danielle, we give a plug for them, but they do a lot of chiropractic and natural therapies and vitamins. But
that's where Vivian
and
worked.
Vivian worked there, and she was there like, was it a week or a week and a half before she went into the hospital for the final time? I can't remember what it was. Maybe 2 weeks. It was no more than 2 weeks, and she seemed really upbeat. And when you told me, Doug, that was like. I'm going. It's like I got hit in the head with a brick. I go, is this real? This can't be real, you know. So that was my initial impression. It was sort of like I was hit in the head, and I was too stunned to really make a cogent response because it didn't seem real to me at all, you know.
Well, she and I had celebrated our 50th anniversary of the day we met, and we had gone to Frankenmuth and just had a good time that day, and but that was the last time that we went out together on a date, you know. But it was really a great time that we had. And it was on June the 7th that was the day that you were talking about. She had done 3 massages.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
And so she was. She was continuing to work, and really, Vivian was like this. She would spread joy wherever she went, you know. And that evening we went to the marriage thing, and I could tell she was spent. She was not feeling good. And it was the next day that she told me, "I think you need to take me to the emergency because I'm not breathing very well." And so, so we started to try to figure out what to do. I took her to the emergency, and they first they had a COVID test, and it wasn't COVID, at least from the initial test that they gave, and so they could see she was having trouble breathing, and her heart rate was up, and so they put her on oxygen, and she was in the hospital about 3 days, and then they sent her home with the oxygen, and so it was like from Friday to the next Monday. She was home with me, and then we went to see the oncologist, and they put her right back in emergency because her breathing was still not very good, and then they suspected, well, maybe it was still COVID, and so they put her in the COVID unit.
Okay.
Well, the problem with that, of course, is I couldn't see her.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
And so that was a bad thing, but I figured, well, you know, right at this moment I was still under the assumption that it was bronchitis or something like that, you know, and because we had no diagnosis at that point.
Oh, okay.
And so we were playing it safe with her in the COVID unit, and Friday I was out walking the neighborhood. It was a beautiful day, and I had just talked with some neighbors, telling them, you know, my wife's in the hospital, but she's a tough old girl. She'll be able to.
She is, I tell you, pioneer stock, Doug. You know.
And you know, her thing was she's going to live to be 145.
Yep.
Well, it was on that walk that I get the call from the hospital saying that her heart was failing. I need to get down there right away. And at that time, they said, well, she's gone. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, oh, my goodness. And so I go down there, and there she was, you know, just gone, you know, body laying there. And so I call up Kirby Riles, of our friends for many years. And Kirby
been on the show a couple times,
yeah. Yeah, Kirby lives within walking distance of the hospital down at McLaren, and so he comes up and he just helps me a lot, and so I sort of knew, having gone through it with my mother and my father, I sort of knew what some of the things I needed to do, and so I talked to the funeral home and I had them work things out. But that evening I said, Lord, I just poured out my heart to the Lord, and asked him, Vivian was such a healthy person. She dedicated her life to good health. She was such a beautiful person. Now what's going on? And it's just got to me. And then the Lord just gave me a peaceful picture of her with him in heaven. And there was the mansion in the background. And if you look at my book here, it's got a picture of a mansion. And I'll tell you a little bit about that mansion.
Yeah.
But what my picture of her was that she was in heaven with Jesus, and Jesus was stretched out over a rock, and she was working on those stripes with her alabaster box of costly perfume. And I said, Lord, if that's what's going on, she was on loan to me for 50 years. Now she's yours, and I guess I'm good with that. And what that did for me was it took away the grief, took away the sting, and it sort of cleared my mind of all the confusion that happened. And so I said, well, I can't undo this.
No.
It's time for me to maybe take a little different turn in my life and turn the page and do what I can to be a blessing to other people. And so that's the story of the No Worries in Heaven. It's the story of how he comforted me to the point where I could deal with my emotions, handle the myriad of tasks that awaited me after her death.
You were amazing, Doug. I look at the stuff you did, clearing out the house, taking care of the financial stuff, and just the stuff you did. So you're amazing to me to do that. Well, I think I would be floundering,
And I figured, what I learned through that process and the things that I really ended up dealing with could help somebody else that might be in that same situation. And and fortunately, Vivian had things quite well in order in a lot of different ways.
She did.
Although I found out a little bit later there are some things that I thought doing it my way might have been better. And so I'm starting to I'm still working through a lot of this sort of thing. I still am getting emails on her email list from certain things where I thought that I had that all taken care of, and it's not taken care of. It's in a system. All these cleaning up a digital footprint is really
difficult.
Really a difficult thing. And
finding that out with my brother James, who also passed away last year. And we're trying to take care of his stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you think you got to take. How come I'm still getting bills from the phone company? I can't even shut the phone off, and it's just weird stuff like that. But there's bank statement things you can't. It's a mess. So I know what you're talking about, and luckily I got a sister that's helping me with all that stuff. But,
it's helpful. Vivian had things pretty well settled, and I called up. The first thing I did after I talked to the funeral home, I called the lawyer. Because I knew that the will was in our safety deposit box, but where on the heck was the safety deposit box key? And so Vivian never told me where it was.
Is that like a mailbox? Is that
it's like but it was where she kept all the valuables. Now, a point taken here. The safety deposit box is really no good.
Oh, I was gonna say maybe I should get one of those things to put all my will in there and stuff that I have to
Bad
find.
idea. If you
Bad
lose the key,
You're in trouble.
You're in trouble,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. And Vivian had a whole bunch of boxes laying around the houses that of where she'd throw in unopened mail, so when she got some time, she would go through it.
Yeah.
And but it's all this stuff that needed to be shredded and worked through, and there's about 40 of these boxes
Oh my
all around
goodness.
the house, and so I had searched through every one of these boxes, and I think it was about through 80% of them. I finally found the Chase folder that had the safety deposit box key in it. And I was
At least you found it.
I had already talked with him and about getting a guy come out to drill the safety deposit box so that I could get into it. Because, but I talked to the lawyer, and they said, "Oh, you're fine. You've got everything in the way it should be. So don't worry about things because it's all gone to you." Well, not quite, because there's first of all, you get a death certificate, and you get a bunch of copies of it when the funeral
Yes, you do. Yep.
helped with that.
You need a lot of them. Yep, you do.
And so we had to go. I had to go to every one of the banks, and put it. Go with them and tell them that I need to change things over, change the recipients of the goods in the bank, so that it won't. If something happens to me, well then my
Yeah.
kids would get it.
Yeah.
And so all this different thing I had to deal with, and so those were the one things. They just and what I put in this book was a nice practical list of things that you need to pay attention to once your spouse happens to pass away. And in my mind, she left too soon, and she left too suddenly for me to process it real quickly, but the other thing I put in the book was a little bit about our original love story.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, we have time. If we have time, if you share a little bit about that.
okay,
It's kind of fun.
well, it goes back to 1972 or 1971, May 22nd, 1971, the day that we met, which was we met on a campus action canoe trip out at MSU, and we were going down the Osable River, and
Yep.
we met at Carlisle Canoe Livery. I remember we went. There was Uncle John's Pancake House. Remember that?
Yeah, vague. Yeah, they still are. They're not still around.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
But I talked with she and her girlfriend, and I said, "You guys want to learn how to paddle the canoe?" And so when we get up there, I took note when Vivian signed her name in the book.
Okay.
I didn't know what her name was, and so I checked that out,
Yeah.
and then.
Checking her out. Yep.
And there's a picture in my book of the day that we met, and I'm sitting in the canoe, and I'm sort of looking up at her, and she's smiling, all radiant, just like she was, and I was captivated. I was
Yeah, I know. You were, what they say in that old Bambi card, you were pixelated, man. I remember.
Twitter-pated.
Twitter-pated, that's what it was, yeah. Twitter-pated, yeah. The other one's Mr. D's Goes to Town. Anyway, but and you were, I could tell you were smitten. You looked at me like, oh, I love this girl. I remember you used to say that. It was so funny.
Yeah.
Old people were young at one time too. Just trust you, and you were. I remember that. Yeah, when you of course the wedding was fun. I remember that because you didn't really need moss grow to your feet. You guys got engaged pretty quick, it seemed to me.
Yeah, after I met her, it was that October that I tricked her into proposing to me.
That's right. Oh yeah, share that. That's kind of funny. We got 4 minutes
Well,
left.
what I did was I asked her, after our date, I said, "How do you ask a girl to marry you?" And she says, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "Yes."
Yeah, pretty funny.
But she was a good sport, and she had a smile that would light up her room.
Would, she was good. Yeah.
But I also talked a little bit about her family history, because she was born in China, and her grandfather was official of transportation for Chiang Kai-shek in the previous government, and when the communists came in, they were forced out of their home, and they ended up in Hong Kong and then in Brazil. And so her past was quite turbulent, and a lot of that affected her, the way she did things, because she was so practical. She made sure that things were almost perfect. She was kind of a perfectionist in that way. That kind of sometimes drove me nuts. But she was, I think, one of the reasons that we had a good life was that she made sure that our life was good.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that about her, and our love story lasted through my times with the Navy, going through different kinds of jobs, and trying to figure out what my life was supposed to be like, until I ended up with the job with serving the DNR with computer programming, and I went from chemistry to physical science to computer programming, and with the Navy in the middle, muddling it all up, and I think we managed to survive. One thing she did was that when I was in the Navy, she prayed that I wouldn't be away from her for more than 2 weeks at a time. And what happened was that I got shore duty right out of the A school, and then when I did get a ship, it came into the yards to be torn apart. And so I never did go to sea except for some sea trials, supposed to be 6 weeks in length.
Yeah.
And but that's when the oil crisis hit, and so we had to come into port every weekend. And so her
prayer was answered.
Prayer was answered, and I thank God for that. But it was a good time I had with my wife. No Worries in Heaven is one of the 6 books that I have, 6 or 7 books now, but you can see those on my website. Revolution Against Evolution, the first book, then Persuaded by the Evidence, Transformed by the Evidence, and now I have a book called Dr. Hale's Home Remedy and Recipe Book. And so the Revolution Against Evolution and Dr. Hale are all going to be republished and put on Kindle and Amazon.com, so you can see those books there. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.